Hi, my name is Jordan King. I'm recording this for the small group interactions. Apologies, I'm going to have to record this on my work computer and look back and forth because my microphone's not working on my main computer for some reason, so that's why I'll be looking back and forth here. So how did my group involvement with this group differ from other groups, and did I consider this a team or a group? I considered this more of a group than a team. We had a lot of issues trying to get everybody together on the same page and the same schedules, and I felt like a team had a little bit more structure than what we were able to provide in this group setting. This definitely differed quite a bit from previous groups that I've been in. Most of those were in class or in person, where attendance is required for those classes. So people were physically there, and it made the group interactions a lot easier rather than having to try and find a time where people weren't working or didn't have other school things going on or family. So I found this to be definitely a new experience. As far as the roles that were assigned and if it affected anything, Chris and I were usually the only ones in the meetings that we had, and Matt jumped in here and there throughout the week, and Mafiamba jumped in once or twice. But Chris kind of took over more of a leadership role, and I was a little bit more of a follower, but because there were two of us, both of us kind of had to interact at the same amount as we were doing these assignments. For the second prompt, again on the roles, Chris kind of jumped in early as a leader. He kind of looked over the assignments, grabbed the tasks that needed to be done, and divvied them out to Matthew and I. And then we communicated through there as to what needed to be done. But Christopher kind of oversaw the document creation and the finishing touches for that. What norms emerged in the group, and which of these were formal, non-formal? So it was kind of obvious from the start that Christopher and I were the only ones that were going to be able to make the meetings. So as far as structure of these meetings, we got in, we quickly went over anything if we had a previous meeting, anything that still needed to be looked at, kind of the tasks that we needed for this new one, and then we hopped right into it. We discussed the tasks that needed to be done that day or within the next couple of days. We divvied those out, who was going to do what. We got the links for the documents created and sent out, and from there, Matthew would usually check, and we would assign him one of the tasks that still needed to be done, and he would get that done and let us know in the channel when it was finished. And Mafiamba hopped in usually once or twice during the week and was able to do the exact same thing. Status and power within the group. This was challenging for us because there were only two of us. Again, Chris took more of that leadership role. He was really comfortable in that. He kind of added some structure to things as we went into our meetings. He kind of had everything laid out and what we needed to do, and he communicated that to us, and we were able to come together and get our sections done. But again, it was just me and him, so we kind of had a mix of the two, especially with the stocks assignment where we needed to have an observer. That just didn't end up working out because no one could really just be quiet and observe. We both had to interact both times we were in the meetings, so it was definitely a little bit more of a hybrid, but I didn't have any issues with how this worked. I didn't have any issues with how Chris kind of took the leadership role. He did a really good job with it. There was no, selfishness on his part. He actually ended up doing a lot of the extra work that the group needed when the others didn't communicate, or we didn't hear anything back on whether or not they were going to do their part. I never once felt as if he was abusing his power or being unfair. Patterns throughout the group process. We kind of did maintain the same pattern. Chris and I we checked it, we still do check it morning, and then usually once during the day, and then one time at night. And usually night we were the most active. We found that to be our pattern, and then Matthew would usually check in every other day, and Mafiamba usually Thursday or Friday, and then usually sometime on Sunday he'd check in and grab his other parts. But that ended up being the pattern that emerged for us, is we would communicate back and forth. And look, after the first week was a little challenging because we didn't know if Matthew or the others were going to actually do their part. But this week, they also did the same thing where towards the end of the week, they came in, saw what they needed to do, and got their parts done. What stages of group interaction did the group move through? I think we got stuck on the orientation phase. That was the biggest struggle for us. We never really got a singular time where we all were on and talking to each other to get any introductions, to get familiar with one another, to sync up schedules. We kind of just sporadically messaged in the group channel about what we needed to do, and then Christopher and I continued to check each day a couple times, and the others would just hop in. So that made the orientation phase, it never really got completed. But we had no conflict as far as deciding what needed to be done, no ideas that really conflicted. Matthew did jump in with some good ideas, and Chris had some great ideas, and I contributed as well, and we all kind of put it together into a singular project. So there was never one time where any of us were at odds as to where the project was going. So that definitely made this process a little bit easier. And then we moved smoothly through emergence and reinforcement stages. We haven't had any issues with those. What kind of agenda did the group follow? It ended up being simply just following the assignment instructions. As mentioned before, when Matthew or Christopher and I would get in the meetings, we'd go over the assignment, we'd break it down into what tasks needed to be done, and then we just assign those tasks. He would take some, I would take some, we would give some to Matthew, and then we would usually leave one for Mafiamba in case he was able to get in touch with us. We weren't sure if he was going to do it, and then we usually only left the one for him in case he didn't do it. It would be easier for us to just finish that singular task rather than assigning him anymore and worrying about them not getting done. We set up a singular document for both assignments now just through Google Docs. This actually made the process pretty easy for us. Because of the lack of communication and schedules being in sync, we were able to hop into the document, and rather than needing to communicate like what they had done and what they hadn't done, we're able to just see it outright in the document. This made it a lot easier because some of us had like the first two tasks and then the last two tasks, and we needed to see what was going on in the middle to be able to connect these all together. So having that singular document was a big saving grace for us, and it made these assignments much simpler for us. Evaluating the overall success of the group, I think despite these challenges, we actually did a pretty good job. Christopher picked up a lot of slack. I was able to pick up some slack. Matthew did jump in and finish his sections, and I think Mafiamba actually did get his section done for our application assignment. So despite the challenges and never really being on at the same time, it did come together pretty well. Really, again, just the biggest struggle was scheduling for us. Everybody kind of pulled their weight when we were able to get in sync, when we got our tasks assigned out to everybody. When we actually, everybody got everything together, it came together really well. As far as the suggestions on if I were to do this again, I think it really comes down to just the nature of online classes. Most of us are doing this because we cannot attend a traditional class. We don't have the ability to give that time. We have crazy work schedules. I know I work 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and that's when the other guys were getting off work, and I wasn't able to sync up with them. So I had to hop in and just communicate what I can, and then Friday and Saturday I'd have to get into meetings with them. So that definitely made that challenging. It's just the nature of online classes. Group work is pretty frustrating to accomplish. So I think my suggestions would be kind of in line with how these are accelerated classes, is dropping the quantity of the assignments, but increasing their size and the amount of time we have to work on them. If we had less assignments, but they were bigger and they were out over maybe 2 weeks, it would give us a little bit more time to kind of sync up. And especially with this like stocks assignment where we needed to have 3 or 4 meetings, like that just can't happen in a week with our schedules. So we weren't able to do that very easily. We really had to make some big sacrifices that just can't happen every week. So pushing that up to 2 weeks would give more opportunities for just people to meet together, to be able to kind of progress the skills we're actually working towards in this class, which is the group interaction, being able to work well in teams. And I don't feel like, as it's set up now, you really get to progress those because there's not really any group interaction if half the people can't make it. So yeah, I think those, if I were to do it again, and those are the suggestions I'd kind of offer as to how to change up this process and maybe make it a little bit easier.